Welcome everybody. This is the General SharePoint Development Special Interest Group and bi-weekly sync. And today is 29th of November. And I'm calling live from European SharePoint Conference. The conference actually is just closing in 15 minutes. All of the final sessions are actually getting closed, and the expo area is already just getting closed. So personally, I'll be heading to the airport immediately after this call, but obviously we need to make sure that I didn't want to skip this one because there was a great demo from Timo, and I also actually wanted to cover some stuff what we demonstrated in the European SharePoint conference and get the input from your side as well. So it's always interesting to show the stuff and then having a discussion on the area. Now, let's actually get moving on the actual content. So quickly, again, always the intro, but quickly explaining. So SharePoint PnP and this general DevSig is all about the non-JavaScript development topics. So basically, if you're interested on provisioning, end-to-end solution designs, automation, APIs, flow, Power Apps, and all of that, all of the non-client side stuff, this is really the special interest group for those kind of things. Then we have a separate special interest group which is meeting bi-weekly on Thursdays as well, which is around SharePoint Framework and client-side development. So we're kind of differentiating those topics. To be fair, on the IM window, quite often people are asking whatever questions related on SharePoint Dev, and that is absolutely welcome. You can have a side discussions there to get your issues or whatever questions answered. Now, today, we can, let's see, I'm going to click there. That's how we get moving. Now, before we go to the actual agenda, just to remind everybody, Ekhel already actually volunteered. That's good for the future. You can always, if you're interested, get some stage time in these calls. So we would actually always prefer to have at least one community demo in this course because it's really interesting to see how people are using SharePoint and extending SharePoint or Power Apps or Flow, anything in the context of SharePoint as well. So you're more than welcome to actually have a 10 to 15 minute spot in this course by contacting me, Patrick, or any of the other PnP guys, and we'll get you scheduled for a upcoming session or upcoming community course. It probably won't be always the next one. In this case, actually, Timo got right directly scheduled on the next one, but typically we have quite a few demos already agreed on the following weeks, and that means that it might be a few weeks forward in our community course. Now, you can also absolutely contribute in a GitHub. We have 450 samples already in GitHub related on SharePoint development under the SharePoint organization in GitHub. And then obviously always provide feedback. It's super important that we also not just in the open source and community side, but also in the SharePoint engineering side, will know if you do not like something or something is missing, something is blocking you to move to the SharePoint Modern. Let us know. We want to actually get you unblocked. So all of that feedback is more than welcome using whatever channel, Twitter, IM window now, the issue list and or discussion boards. Try to get us your input so we're able to address that. Thank you, Stefan, for that input. So that worked really well. Yes, the multilingual is a challenge in the modern experiences. We know we are working on that one, and we should have some news on that one sooner or later. So, but let's. Well, I can't disclose more than that for now. Now, that's a fair point, and thank you for the input, Stefan. Now, on the agenda of today, I have a few slides, few general slides, and updates related on SharePoint development, and then we have a great demo from Timo. I'm not sure if Timo can actually explain if and update me also that if he has written the same blog post which he wrote in Finnish, also in English. I've just accidentally run into Timo's blog post actually in LinkedIn, and it's an awesome solution clarification on how you combine Azure, Power Apps, Microsoft Flow, and SharePoint. But I'll let Timo explain what it is and how it actually works because it was a really cool setup, and we'll get it obviously also recorded so you'll know how to do that kind of stuff as well. And then what I wanted to do after that, after Timo's session, is talk about slightly the PnP provisioning service. And in this case, I'm going to demo that. I'm going to explain where we are with that one and what is it. First of all, if you haven't heard about that one, it's a upcoming website which can be used for pre-sales purposes. So getting you demo sites which are looking cool. So I'm going to explain where we are with that one because we showed that in the keynote in the European SharePoint conference and also in the other PMP sessions. So making sure that everybody is up to date where we are with that. And then hopefully this time we should have time for Q&A in the end as well. Let's see how the call actually goes. Now, a few updated kind of repeated URLs. At some point, maybe I should not always have the slides in here, but we're really trying to make sure that everybody are aware of these URLs. So AKMS SP Dev Docs or docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint. We have the developer documentation there. And all of this content is open source. So if there are typos or if there's issues on the documentation, if it's missing something, please you can submit pull requests or open an issue or a comment in the article, and we are able to then fix that documentation. Now, I know personally that there's quite a lot of actually typos in a lot of those articles, and that's because they're written in Finglish, not in English. But typically, English-speaking persons do understand Finglish. There are certain word changes here and there, and those typo fixes are more than welcome. That was kind of a joke. But there's absolutely a typos, and you can submit pull requests on the documentation. Whoa, somebody joined with a microphone on. Please remember to mute yourself, so there was a pretty big noise when you are joining into the call. Cool, that should be fine. People are not talking, but I'm talking. So on the documentation, that's fine. And then the issue list, we are trying to catch up on the issue list as fast as possible. We're now a few weeks behind of the issues, and obviously we're all the time looking into if there's any critical development issues and jumping in them as needed. Now, this is something which is really high priority in our agenda to catch up on your submissions and also start cleaning from the end and making sure that there's no open issues in here. We have like 800 open issues here. Some of them are comments in the articles in the docs. Some of them are actual issues. So we are reprioritizing this slightly more higher in our tasks in the future. To be fair, for example, during this week, it's been pretty busy week because a lot of the engineering is actually here in Copenhagen. So we haven't really been able to address the incoming issues unless there's a critical stuff. Now, quick update on the roadmap. Nothing actually that major since last week or 2 weeks ago. So obviously SharePoint Framework 1.7 was coming out early this November. We're not planning to release a new version of SharePoint Framework by end of this year. And it's going to be like January, February timeframe, potentially the 1.8. Just trying to figure out where it's actually going to land. In 1.7, we had added a native SharePoint 2019 support. Dynamic data, which is the how to share data between SharePoint Framework components when GA, and you will see, for example, out-of-the-box web parts pretty soon actually starting exposing dynamic data as well. So you're starting to able to make connections between your web parts and out-of-the-box web parts. For example, a list the details view connections and all of those. So that's going to happen hopefully by end of this year. You'll start seeing those functionalities in the SharePoint UI. And there was a lot of preview capabilities like alignment with Microsoft Teams experiences. We will probably talk about that one slightly later today. Related on the Microsoft Teams experiences, we have been demonstrating the Microsoft Teams tab sample, which is around the leads in our Ignite and also in the European SharePoint conference. Just a quick note on that one: that leads web part is now available for you as a solution. Let me actually get a URL on that one. There was issues on the version which I added in on the last week there, but I fixed those now earlier this week. So if you're interested on seeing that leads web part, which works as a web part or as Microsoft Teams tab, you're able to pull down that solution and test it like we do in the keynotes. Now, on Abraham's question, just related on 2019, SharePoint 2019 is G8, so that it's no longer preview. SharePoint 2019 is in production, available official version. It supports 1.4.1. Now, The fact that I have a native 2019 support on the slide means that if you run the Yeoman generator 1.7, it will ask you, are you targeting SharePoint Online, SharePoint 2019, or SharePoint 2016? So, and if you choose SharePoint 2019, it will then scaffold and create a solution structure using technically 1.4.1. But you're using the Yeoman generator 1.7. That's basically what that means there. Now, the big things where we're investing in the future is one of the things which we talked here in the European SharePoint conference is the content security policy. And this is there to increase the security related on potential malicious scripts. And this basically what it means is that you're able to filter down acceptable locations where the browsers can load scripts as part of the solutions in the pages. So that will basically block those kind of, let's say, JavaScript injections, which could be coming from NPM package level. So we're able to say that in our environment, in my tenant, only the JavaScript which is actually hosted by Microsoft can be actually executed in browser. And so that will kind of a additional layer of security there. Then the big themes for us by end of this year is not really around adding capabilities or adding functionalities, because even the SharePoint framework and the modern experiences in general, they're starting to be pretty mature. Sure, there are still gaps and we need to improve them, but it's getting to the level of, wow, this is really truly enterprise ready, and we're able to start using them. But now we need to work on the more stabilization, performance, and kind of really polish the functionalities more and more. Now, awesome question from Nerla Mujelan. Sorry for mispronouncing your name. The SP client patch is in preview still in SharePoint Framework 1.7. We will actually talk about that one on next Thursday in SPFX call, because we have a few different options how we could actually implement that, the client patch, and we want your input on that. It might be that I will actually, thanks Mugelan. So it might be that we'll actually write a blog post to get your input as a potentially Microsoft form, so you're able to give us your input on the suggestions. So we have a few different options where we want to go with that, with the SP HTTP client patch, and your input is important there. Cool. And obviously, next thing, like I said, we're not shipping a new version of SharePoint Framework by end of this year because you should never ever ship 5 p.m. on Friday evening because weekend is starting. So the same thing with holiday season. We don't want to ship anything new, which would then cause challenges during the time period when people are having more vacation. So the next version will then happen on the after the New Year. At some point, and will then come more detailed list of features when we're getting closer to that release date. Cool. Just a reminder on this one, I took this one from the slides which we're using also in Keynote. So we have a newer version available on the Modernization Framework, and this is really around the fact that if you're looking into modernizing your existing SharePoint classic sites and pages. So if you have existing classic pages within your SharePoint Online, this is a modernization framework which can help you to actually do in-place replacements and transformation from classic to modern. It is an open source tooling, but if you go AKMS SPPMP Modernize, you are able to then get more details on what's possible. How would you be able to take advantage of this tooling in practice? So already available today. There was a new version. I think Bert pushed out a new version earlier this week. So there is new content, new tooling, new open source tooling available on this one. So cool stuff. Have a look on that. Thank you, David. Thank you. Now, let's actually move to the demo section. And so let's actually give Timo the stage. And Timo, you don't actually need to rush on the demo. So let's, and I will potentially ask questions during the but let's give you the stage and you can do the introduction of yourself and what are we going to see.
Okay, great. Let's start. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Timo Pertilä, and I work here in Finland as a consultant in a company called Digital Illustrated. And today I like to demo to you about team provision solution that is fully made with with these low-code or no-code tools provided by Microsoft, like Power Apps and Flow. And I have wrote 2 blog posts about these subjects this week and last week, but those are unfortunately in Finnish. But I have translated the first one in English, and it will be published in Flow community blog, I think, in next week, Thursday. So you don't have to read this in Finnish if you don't like it. But the overall image about the solution is this. So I have actually built few templates, Microsoft Team templates, that end user can order. And here is the end user, and he orders the new teams by using Power Apps. And all the new requests are stored in SharePoint online list. And whenever there will be new team requests, then I have one flow that handles all the requests. And in that flow, in the case that end user wants to have a private team, then there is actually approval flow on top of that. So every private team in this organization has to be approved by the admins, because this organization wants that every team are public. And of course they can order private teams, but there has to be some special argument that why that team has to be private. And because of that, there is this approval flow. But after the request has been approved, then it's been done, and it is done created by using this Microsoft Graph API, and it used these existing team templates and make clone of one of those, and after that just modifying that new team created. So it add owners and members and one tab and so on. And that's the overall image what happens in this solution. And let's look this in practice. So here is teams, and you can see there is 2 template team. There's one template for just regular team. There's 4 pre-made channels, and then there's one template for the project teams. And then we have in SharePoint, we have the team request lists when all these requests are placed. And then we have Power Apps. Unfortunately, I cannot show it in edit mode because just before this session, my environment had some kind of error, and it's just keep hanging there. But I can open it here. So this is simple, very simple Power Apps, and it has two screens. This screen has form that just submit the request in the SharePoint list, and then we see after that the confirmation screen. But now we can make order. Like I like to order just regular team site, and I like to have this one be private. And it will be confidential. This is classifications, and I can add owners as well. Antti will be owner, and Pekka will be member. And just put it there. And actually I can make another one at the same time. Let's make some project team. And when I order a project team, I have to put also project ID. We see later why this is important. And that will be internal team, and I don't add any owners or members on that one. Let's place that one also. That's the Power Apps part of this solution. And now we can open the flow where all this logic happens. And it seems pretty simple when we look on only these main parts. And this flow starts every time when new item is created in the request SharePoint list. And after that, there's few variables. These are for the authentication part. I have created or registered application in Azure AD, and I have client ID and client secret for that registered application, and I use that in my REST API calls to Microsoft Graph. And then I have two other variables here, privacy, and it's by default all the themes are public. And then there is one other variable describing is this theme cloning operation is this running, and it's default always that it's currently running. Okay, and the first step in our flow is that we look at this. Is the requested theme private or public? And if it is private, then we just update in SharePoint list that it's waiting for approval, and we start an approval process. And how this looks like is so that in my email, I am also administrator here. I get this approval notification that there is pending approval. This theme is SPS community call, and here's argument why this one has to be private, and I can approve this request here. So these approval actions are built in Flow, as you might know. Okay, and after that, when the approval part is done, you can look at what was the response on approval, and if it was rejected, then we just update the request item that's the status to reject, and send the email to the original requester that I'm sorry that we are not creating this theme, and we terminate this flow. And if that was okay, then we just change the privacy to the private, and then continue in our flow. And after that, we clone the theme, just regular REST API call to the graph, Microsoft Graph. We are using the chosen template ID and put all the parameters here in the body part, usual stuff. And because the cloning operation, the clone is not ready immediately, then we have two options in Flow. We can just wait 5 or 10 or 50 minutes, or we can poll the status of the cloning, and this time we poll the status. So we have here loop in our Flow that in every 30 seconds we get the cloning status, and if it's something else than running, then we exit the loop. And after that, we check that what was the end status of the cloning. Okay, and if it is something else than succeed, then we update the request status in SharePoint list that it's failed, and again send email to the requester that we are so sorry, this theme creation was failed, and we actually terminate the flow also. But if the cloning was okay, we can continue here. And what we do next is that we do 3 parallel paths in our flow. They are going in the same time. And in first path, we actually add the original requester as an owner in the new theme. And after that, we get all the channels, because depending on the template, there is 4 or 5 channels, and we are actually looking for the general channel, because we like to add one tab in general channel. And when we find that one, we check that are we building project team or just a team. And if we are building project team, we add new tab with link, and the link is pointing this kind of project tool, and the project tool will have this project ID end user has been given in the Power Apps form. This project ID will be used as a URL parameter to the project tool. That when you click the project tool, it opens up the tool in the same project that the team is covering. But if we are creating just a regular team, then we actually add in general channel new tab with link, and its link is pointing to the HR page in the intranet. And after that piece is done, then we delete the original owner from the template. So the template has to have one owner, and when we clone the template team, these original owner are kind of moved on to the new team also. So usually we don't want to have that owner also in the new team, so we deleted that one. And what happens here in these two parallel paths is that we add these new owners. The end user might type in the request form, and all the members end user typed in also the same request form. And after that, everything is ready. And if we look this flow a little bit more, we can see that actually this flow isn't doing anything special. It's pretty simple example how to make this provisioning, but still there's actually quite too many steps here what happens during the provisioning. And now when we open the teams, we can see that we have this SPS community call site, and we have all these 4 channels here, and we have this link pointing to the HR page, and we can see that this is private as we ordered it, and it's labeled as a confidential. And then we have this another team that was project team, and there we have link to the project tool, and there is URL parameter, same project ID I inputted in Power Apps, and this is a public team, and it's classified as internal. Yes, and that's shortly how you can build Teams provisioning just using these no-code or low-code tools in Office 365 package. And of course,
yep.
Flow is heavily used these Microsoft Graph REST API calls, so it's kind of what you like to call no-code solution. Of course, there's kind of code because REST API calls are there.
Yeah.
That's all. Is there something on your mind you'd like to ask or comment?
Well, we're getting on my window, but can you go back on the project tool? So in your case, so basically you're demonstrating the fact that you can add additional tabs and you can configure those and all of that, right? So that was the thing. I was doing something else when you were showing that. So the project tool is the website basically. Quotes.
Yeah, this is kind of it's not real tool. It's just
but basically you can add additional channels using the REST APIs and everything else and configure that. But really cool stuff. There was a few questions what I wanted to actually have a discussion with you. So is there a way to block Teams creation in Microsoft Teams? So how would you do that if you would use this kind of a tool?
Sorry? What?
So could you? Is there a way to block the team creation then in Microsoft Teams if you would like to use this kind of a tooling. So have you thought about that one?
Just, placing this creation tool here. Did you mean like this one?
Yes, but basically, is there a way to get rid of the join or create a team link in the Microsoft team on the left menu? Because you want to basically push everybody to use the tool. That's basically the discussion point.
I think it's possible to not remove this one.
Yeah.
You can remove that. There's no way that end user can make this creation.
Yeah.
After that, you can only join existing team here and look. But yeah, you can disable this part.
Yep.
From your tenant. Yes.
That was a question asked on the sessions. Points. Now, the next what we were chatting on the IAM window while we are doing the demo. What about the packaging? So this is absolutely a brilliant solution. Absolutely great demo on different PSAs. What you can do with low code or no code options. But how would you package this to your customer? Any thoughts on that?
We can all these flows. We can export these.
Yep.
Import you can import this as a logic app in Azure, so it might be because if I do this one for any of my customer, I pretty much don't do this with Flow. I might do this with logic app, and you can export it. You can export that in JSON file and import it in Azure.
But that's a fair point. Why would you do that as a logic app versus a Flow?
Maybe in management side, it's easier to manage that who can access this workflow, and you can because in Flow you have to run this flow in some account. It's now I have created and I have to share it, and maybe I have to create one system account. Yeah. That is used, just to make sure that if I leave the company that somebody can run this one. Today it's kind of gray area when you should use the logic app and when you can go with the Flow, because the functionality are pretty much same.
Yeah.
And currently you can do this by kind of generic account also, this flow stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of in this. But in logic app you can use application insight, and you can make alerts, and whichever these key actions fails, you can trigger it and get the alerts.
Yeah.
The logic app is much better with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because Flow is basically it's kind of tool for the power users, maybe business users, and the logic app for the developers.
So the thinking point would be then, I'm just kind of summarizing that when you are actually building a more enterprise solutions, this is more enterprise solution, clearly, you would use the logic apps. Now, the downside of using the logic app is that then you need to get access to the Azure subscription behind of the tenant, and that typically is much more complicated process in the customer scenarios than in Flow, right?
It's in many cases when we start, actually the slowest thing is to get access to the Azure for the customer side.
Yes. Yes.
This one you can start because everybody, if you just have Office 365 account, you can start to build this Flow.
Yeah.
Of course, I need in this solution, I need this application registration that I can authenticate to the Office Graph. So I have to get access somehow, or somebody has to grant me access in the Azure AD. So it's not so black and white. Yeah, but usually all enterprise stuff in Logic App, and maybe the lighter stuff in the Flow.
Absolutely makes sense.
But it depends, of course.
Everything depends. That's why there's this area as well. So because it depends. But a great demo and a great walkthrough on the different scenarios and how this actually works. And it's absolutely great to have now the capabilities in Microsoft Teams to actually use the APIs and create the also team stuff using API flows, which will, by the way, be part of the PMP tenant visioning pretty soon as well. So we're looking into adding the team's dimension, the BMP tenant templates quite soon as well. So you're able to basically create a template, tenant template, which will then define what site collections, what themes are created, what other things are created. So we're looking into having also flow and Power Apps dimension there. So that should be pretty cool.
And the flow and the graph API, they are so powerful combination.
Yes.
You can do whatever you want. And of course, you can, from flow, you can, for example, start functions that actually runs the PowerShell templates. And these are interesting options also that, for example, using the PNP stuff via PowerShell.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Timo, for that one. Let me actually, so I'm running a single screen, which is horrible for me because I typically have multiple screens. So let's see if I can actually get my demo and discussion side by side somehow magically, and let's have a discussion on the provisioning service. So let me actually share my screen, and let's see how do I actually make this happen. Let's move to another topic now. I do apologize, I cannot see the discussion in the Iron window while I'm doing this, so let me see if I can actually make this happen in a slightly different way. So let's do this, and let's do that, and let me actually, that should be actually acceptable. There we go. So I can actually see if there's any questions on the Iron window, so we can have a discussion on them. That's the downside of having only one screen traveling with me. Good, David can see what I'm sharing, and Stefan as well. So one of the things what we, so completely different topic, completely different demo. I just wanted to go through, because we demonstrated this in a European SharePoint conference keynote as well. So just an update where we are within our provisioning service. So one of the things within the SharePoint side, so let me actually start by explaining this from a template perspective. One of the cool things in the SharePoint, well, not only on SharePoint, one of the cool things on the PMP templating sites is that pretty recently we added a support for creating tenant templates. And what the PMP tenant templates are, they're basically a definition of the tenant, what you configurations in the tenant level. So I can actually create a definition, or I can create a template which will be then applied to a tenant. And as part of when we are applying that template, we're actually approving, for example, permissions in Azure. We're Graph. We are uploading a SPP KJ file and solution. We are creating themes in a tenant level. So the classic, let's say, the PMP SharePoint templating model is now growing to be, first of all, in a tenant level, so you're able to define site scripts and all of that, and then you're able to also define what site collections are created as well. So like in this case, as an example, we are creating, in this scenario, we are creating 3 different site collections, and inside of these site collections, we could actually have sub-sites even, so we're able to kind of automate full tenant level configuration, not just deployment of a template to an existing site, but also creating those sites and then defining what templates will be created on those sites. Now, I already talked about this one in the context of what Timo showed. So the Teams APIs are now in the 1.0 version of the Graph API, so we're able to actually include team support on the tenant templates. We're looking into supporting also Flow, Power Apps, and all of the other things in the Office 365 tenant level, so that you can actually create in this case, as an example, one PMP file, which you can apply running one PowerShell commandlet against a tenant, and then that will set up the whole solution quickly for your customer or for you from that perspective. Now, that's kind of cool, and basically, it's not just kind of cool, it's actually insanely cool, because the only thing what you need to do is connect using PMP PowerShell to your tenant, and then run and apply a PMP tenant template and the file, and I can send that to you, for example, in an email, and then you'll get always the same end result against the different tenants. Now, that's kind of cool, that's insanely cool, but there's always the question of, well, nice, but my business users who would like to have a cool site like the SharePoint Starter Kit on their consumption, they do not know what is a PowerShell. The fact that we are telling here you should execute this one, that it might be that they don't know what it means. So that means that they are unable to actually test this stuff. So what we wanted to do is that we wanted to actually make this even further simple for anybody to provision demo content against their tenant. So we've started actually building this right after when we got the SharePoint Starter Kit ready. And this is now in a private beta, so it does not work within your tenant, so you can test it, but it's going to actually fail on the final step of provisioning because we are only now doing a private beta testing against certain tenants and certain customers before we are releasing this in a more widely globally. But the whole idea here is that you come to this provisioning.sharepoint PnP URL. There is a service description. We'll need to go through all the legal audits and everything else on the text and everything else on the texts and messaging here before we will release this. You as an end user is basically you're able to see what templates are available. And in this case, I took some templates and screenshots basically from our Ignite samples and the lookbook as a example templates. The only template which actually works right now here are these two, which is the SharePoint page transformation UI. This relates on the modernization topic and the SharePoint Starter Kit. So as an end user, you can go and select and have a more detailed look on the SharePoint Starter Kit. You can actually see what is the end result of this applying this. And then after that, if you really want to be get this one deployed to your, let's say, test tenant, you're able to then click add to your tenant. The reason why I said test tenant is that a lot of these, for example, SharePoint Starter Kit actually sets configurations in a tenant level, because again, it is using the tenant level templating to tenant level configurations. And with that one, in this case, as an example, it does configure permissions and everything else. So applying this kind of a tenant to your production isn't necessarily the right thing to do, because there will be then additional set of site scripts and all of that visible for everybody in the tenant. But applying this to your test tenant or a demo tenant, out of sense. So your developer tenant, which you can get free from Microsoft if you're a developer, or using that for the developer purposes. So now, when it's chosen that, hey, the SharePoint Starter Kit looks awesome, I want to have this kind of a demo, I have a customer project or pre-sales kick tomorrow, I will actually want to show how things are working. You can then click add to your tenant. Then it's going to go through the consent process of Azure AD. In this case, it does require quite heavy permissions because it requires the tenant level permissions, so it's able to actually operate in a tenant level. Now, and that's also one of the reasons why I kind of recommend not to use this in production, rather use it in a test tenant for demo purposes. Now, because the starter kit has a certain set of parameters, you're able to then parameterize this. And this is a dynamic page which is dependent on the template which you actually selected. So in my case, I can, or starter kit case, it has these settings exposed, and I can override those settings. So if I would have a, let's say, meeting tomorrow with Litware Electronics, and I want to show them a cool looking site, I can actually set the company name as Litware Electronics, and that will be then reflected in those site collections, which will be automatically provisioned. Or the site URL prefix, so what is the prefix for the new site collections which are getting created, so you want to group them using some sort of a prefix if you want. It could be a demo, it could be whatever in this case. So I'm not going to actually start the provisioning right now. Or CD for weather forecasts, because in a welcome page of the starter kit, there is a web part, a custom web part, actually out of the box web part, which will be then automatically configured to point to a certain location. And let's say the city weather forecast would be Oslo. And the stock symbol, that's a custom web part on the front page of the portal, and what would be the stock symbol, what you would actually want to do. And then you are able to do the theme definitions as well. This is something what we're still working on. So how do we actually support overriding of the theme? But the idea is that if you would like to have multiple site collections created, which are looking and using, for example, your own company's brand, your own company's color, you're able to say here, theme. And let's say that Litware is all about red, so let's actually do that red, and that red, and that would then actually create a theme automatically, which would be using these colors, and then it would be named like that, and it would be applied automatically to the sites which were just created by the engine. Now, in this case, that, by the way, wouldn't make any sense because the background color would be red, but anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to now start the provisioning. What would then happen when I click the provision, it will actually start the provisioning process. In the background, what actually happens is that this request is actually sent to an Azure web job, which will then use the consented access to your tenant, to the tenant where you wanted this to get created, and that will then provision the template to your tenant, whatever the template actually had. So and that basically, as an end result, I'll come back on the questions in a second. As an end result, in this case, we would get something like, let's go Contoso portal. We would get the actual Contoso portal in that, or Litware Electronics. It would use then a custom theme. It would have some example content. So this is precisely what you're actually getting when you automate the creation. It would have example news, company news, example company events. It actually even has an example company PowerPoint presentation. So you actually are able to immediately see a custom looking welcome page, and it would be then configured automatically with default settings in here as well. And together with an extended footer, which is pretty cool, personalized links and all of that stuff. So that's basically the combination of SharePoint Starter Kit, which is what you're seeing in here. But it's now starting whenever we actually get this out, you can get it applied to your tenant without the requirement of using PowerShell. Now, clarifying certain things. This is there's a Maxime's question. What's the difference with Starter Kit? This is nothing different. So we're just using this provisioning service of one website, apply a Starter Kit. So it is still the same Starter Kit. But the whole point here is that, sorry, Tom, you're not getting access. The point being on the fact, and I know that was an accident, all good. The point being on the fact that we provide this kind of a demo provisioning service. And in future, the Starter Kit will not be the only one here. So we're looking into having additional templates, which our design team will actually, define and decide which will be the ones which we actually will provide as an example content. And then those will be available for you to apply to your tenant as well. We are in progress of creating these additional tenants. Yeah, no worries, Tom. These additional templates, whenever we, our design team actually decides or which ones we actually create and provide here as an example guidance. So you might think this as a pre-sales or a demo environment or demo content generator for your test tenants to show what's possible within the SharePoint Online. Thank you, Brian, for the Fab 40 reference. Theoretically, yeah, maybe. Fabulous 40 had technical issues, actually. The design of Fab 40 was flawed, and that's why it has a pretty strong feeling for many of the people. But in this case, we're using the remote provisioning, we're using supported APIs, we are then automating the configuration. Whenever we get the Teams support in the PMP tenant templates, we are able to then get the same team stuff provisioned using this web service for these example portal templates as well. So basically, the idea is that you're able to then easily get example sites. Now on Ignite, quickly actually doing this one as well, the SP Design guidance. So in Ignite, we released this SP Design guidance on SP Design, and one of big things as part of that announcement was the SharePoint Lookbook. And the SharePoint Lookbook is basically a PDF file, which is kind of telling and showing what can be done in SharePoint Online. Let me scroll down. Using the modern SharePoint. Now, obviously, these are cool pictures, but isn't it even more cooler if you can actually choose any of these example pictures or templates and then apply that to your tenant as a demo content, which you can then use to demonstrate the power of the modern SharePoint. That's really what we're trying to do with this service, and it's planned to go live early next year. And we'll see how many templates and how many templates will actually provide available from here. And let me actually get the link to this one. So SharePoint Lookbook Azure Websites.net. I will paste that one in here. There we go. So you get that one. It was almost as fast as I am. It depends on where we, anyway. But yeah, so that's our provisioning service. And this one, like I said, it's meant to be Microsoft controlled templates. We're not looking into exposing an open source template right now. So it's more on making sure that the templates are then polished. And we in Microsoft, we make sure that they're polished. We're right now, thanks Kevin for the awesome question. We're not right now looking into going open source with contributor templates, because our design team wants to control what kind of modern sites are getting created. At some point in the future, potentially, there might be an open source contribution side of this as well. Now, what's also cool is that everything what you're seeing here, the full automation, the website, the design, what's happening in the Azure side, we will share everything as an open source solution. So you can build similar solutions by yourself. If you're an enterprise and you want to have a similar kind of a look and feel for your, let's say, internal provisioning service, you will get access on the source code. Everything will be MIT licensed, so you can use that and access that any way you want. Engine will be absolutely available in GitHub. Most likely that we will open up the repo, which has actually the templates, so they will be available in a GitHub as well. So that is, they will be available in GitHub, but we're not taking contributions to that GitHub repo, because behind of this service, actually, all of the information what you're seeing here is actually a GitHub repository. So it's already built using the GitHub as the backend, so we're able to more easily kind of submit changes in here as well. Cool. Is this supported by MSA enabled user, MSA multi-factor authentication, right? If that's the question, answer is yes. It's just a standard Azure AD authentication, what's happening in the consent. As long as you're a tenant administrator, you're able to then sign in and consent to application, whatever authentication model you're using, and there you're able to do that. Good question from Gautam, an absolutely 100% valid question. We need to show that in practice. How do we create these tenant templates and site hierarchies? Right now, the only really structure what is available, and an example is the starter kit. So if I go to the, let me actually show the application, and I will want to have, I want to see your discussion. So let me do again the side by side. One second. Here we go. And where's the chat? Chat is over there, and let me get that one in here. So SP Static is the one which is using already the tenant templates. And that's a kind of a reference. So if you go to the provisioning folder in here, you can actually find a StarterKit BMP and StarterKit XML. The StarterKit BMP has been created using the StarterKit XML and this resources folder. How do you actually create these tenant templates? Is that you create them using PowerShell. So in the PowerShell, you are basically creating a in-memory instance of the tenant template, and then you're saying add a site design to this object, and then you add another site design or a file to the object, and then as a final piece, you're saying serialize or save this in-memory object as a BMP file and get a BMP file. And that's really because the classic BMP templates you could actually extract from the live sites, which is a super cool feature, fully supported still. But in the tenant templates, we can't really extract the tenant level settings from the live tenant, because what would we actually, how do we control, what do we extract from there? So that's why you actually build them using this in-memory object. but we need to absolutely super fast get a quick demo video for around that, so people know how to actually make those happen in practice. I think actually we do have a webcast coming out today, which I could potentially, I could actually release the webcast tomorrow, where we actually show in practice how the site, the tenant templates are being created. Let's do that. Let me try to remember to push the webcast out tomorrow, so you will have a video reference how these templates can be created in practice. Using how to build the new site using this templates with SharePoint SPOL still created. I'm not quite sure what the question actually means. Templates. So just to be clear on that, the tenant templates are already available, but there isn't an examples and a documentation, and that's mainly because, like during this week, a lot of the PMP crew, PMP MVPs who are building this stuff and actively contributing have been in a European SharePoint conference, so we haven't been able to get the documentation out because we're delivering sessions and content in here. So we really need to now, the next step, now the conference season is slowing down, and now we can actually concentrate on documentation and guidance on this. The beta cycle, is it open? Unfortunately, no. I do understand that there's high demand and high interest for people to actually get access on this one. I do apologize on the fact that there is no public beta cycle. We are right now testing this with a really subset of tenants, and we don't want to open that as a public beta yet until we have verified that the basic flow is working properly, because we don't have people and resources to answer to your questions. That's really the problem, because if we would do this as a public beta, and then if we would have random exceptions during the process, we wouldn't have resources to support you. Whenever we go first live with this one, it will be beta still, but it will be a public beta. We will explicitly tell that you shouldn't be doing this in production, rather on test tenants, like it actually says here. But it will be a beta, and then we'll make sure that we have a right ways for you to report any issues, what you might be seeing, and to contribute back, give us feedback back around the templates and also the engine itself. So. And yes, Anne, we will definitely get share the links and documentation when the documentation is available. Like I said, I will push out a webcast. We have recorded a webcast together with Erwin van Hoonen, who's one person behind all this stuff. In the webcast, we'll show live using a video how those things can be actually done. Back still on the timing of the service, we understand everybody in the European SharePoint conference has been like, yeah, I want that. I want those sites. I want to have those kind of sites available in my tenant. We understand that. We're trying to get this out potentially early next year, maybe by end of this year, early next year. So it really depends now on we need to polish the wording. We need to get our internal legal adjustments and reviews completed. And right now, because we're after Thanksgiving in US, the work mode slows down in US, and that means that there might be small delays on getting the final bits and pieces approved. That's how the cultures work. So if nothing else, it will then happen early January. So we'll see. Any other questions? This is almost like in the Q&A section already. So if there's any random other questions, happy to answer them as well. Anything which I didn't answer. If I missed any questions, just still get them on the iron window or. Thank you, Marel. Yeah. Is there a schedule for getting communication site as a root site? I think, is it already out that all of the default, all of the new tenants actually already have a communication site as a root site? So now, Irene, just to be clear on that, you can already today get 99.9% of the communication site capabilities in the existing theme site. You will just need to change the welcome page to be using the home content page, and after that it will look like a modern site. There are certain settings still which are not 100% same, which are available in the communication site, because there are small settings related on the hero web part, if I remember correctly, which is not available. The full white being precisely the challenge. Now, you can, so let me actually, that is a fair question, that will be the last question for now, but let me Mark B. Anderson, communication. I'm pasting this one. Creating a modern homepage in the root side of the tenant, and basically in here we talked about this with Mark, and it is fully supported to actually flip the welcome page. And where is it? Here we go. You're able to change the welcome page layout type to be home, and that means that you have full white. You do no longer have the left side navigation in the root of your site, and that's basically the way the site starts looking like a communication site. There are certain small settings which you cannot do there yet, but there's no schedule which I can say that by a certain date everything will be one-to-one. But basically this is already 100% supported. You're able to do full white modern pages in the root of the tenant already today. Now we're 1 minute off the clock. Thank you everybody for joining. Clearly there was a lot of excitement on the provisioning service, and we do understand that everybody wants to get access on it. We'll try to get it out as fast as possible. Also, there will be a webcast tomorrow, then I promised to apparently do that, getting the webcast out related on tenant templates, which will show how to create those multi-site collection creation templates for you as well. And we're working on a documentation updates on this one. Also adding the Teams support. We're already working on that development in the development of the templates, and in the future also Flow and Power Apps in the tenant template, so you can actually have a one file which will then provision a massive amount of things in a tenant level. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your input. Please keep on telling us if something is causing you problems. Timo, thank you. Great demo. Absolutely awesome stuff. Eichel will be absolutely in touch. Let's ping in the LinkedIn or whatever, or in Twitter, and try to get you scheduled on your, what was it? It was a Twitter app or some sort of thing. But if anybody else is interested in doing the live demos on this, please let us know and we'll schedule there. ESPC is now closing on my side, and I will actually start heading to the airport and finally getting home slightly later today. So thank you everybody. We'll be absolutely in touch. Recording is coming out in 24 hours today. Thank you. Bye-bye.